Hey, everyone. Sergeant Major Lance Nutt coming to you from the Sheepdog offices in Northwest Arkansas as we bring is this our fifth episode now, Jeff? Jeff is our off-camera producer and has done such an amazing job for us in making this possible. I'd say Jeff and Bridget and so many of our staff that are always working behind the scenes to help us bring this podcast to you. And it's amazing on our fifth episode, how already I am, the term podcast exhausted is not probably accurate, but it's very emotional at times, especially our last podcast with Sherry Briley, the wife and Gold Star spouse of one of our Black Hawk Down pilots, and his story was Donovan Briley's story was so powerful. I left that podcast session just emotionally exhausted. And I think, as most people will know, is that when you're emotionally tired, you're physically drained as well. But as I've thought about that story and some of the others that we've told so far, the one thing that I've reflected on myself and I've heard from people who have listened is one word that kind of describes them, and it's wow. People just amazed at the stories, amazed at the perseverance that so many of these men and women have shown, either the ones that have served or the ones that, like Sherry, who have supported their loved ones who serve, right? And stories like that are so important to tell. But today, we have a very special, and I'm going to say young man with us, who has, Richard Oakley, also known as Big Oak and Dickie back home, and as I'm going to call him today, Rich. Rich is the epitome of a sheepdog, and as we dig into really telling his story, and giving Rich a chance to tell his story and share some of his experiences. And when I say as a sheepdog, we're talking about a man who has a servant's heart at just every angle imaginable. And when we, one of our founding mottos as an organization was basically helping others as a way of life. That's what defines what a sheepdog is. And Rich, I mean, your story is just that. And if I may, I'm going to dig a little into, and I say personal life. I mean, Rich has made this public on social media. So I feel like in sharing some of Rich's past, and I'm going to say past and present efforts, is your time, Rich, and volunteering and serving the community and communities that you live in and have lived in. And you can correct me where I'm wrong on this, but it says that you're working at the Loudoun County Medical Reserve Corps, or within that role. Is that a volunteer role, Rich?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and then you've worked you still work as part of the Southern States Police Benevolent Association, former Explorer Scout with Boy Scouts of America, and volunteering with the Scouts. You're also volunteering with the Marine Corps' Toys for Tots Foundation and programs, which does just amazing work all over the country. And I've, as fellow Marines, we've all been a big part of that, especially on the reserve side of the house, and helping underprivileged children all over this country. You're also part of the Loudoun County Marine Corps League Detachment. Again, a member and volunteer with Boy Scouts of America. and then you have volunteered with the Sons of the American Legion, Squadron 293. You're a life member of Noble. You've worked with the National Museum of the Marine Corps. And then you get into, your time in law enforcement, specifically really working with the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency. And that it all has come after now a lot of years in law enforcement realm, as you're going to have a chance to share more with us. But Rich, welcome to the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us an opportunity to hear from you and about the things that you've done. I'd like for you to maybe share some of those really impactful experiences that you've had while wearing the uniform. And I'm familiar with some of it, and reading more and listening to some of your story. Just wow. People out there listening, Rich is truly a sheepdog and truly one of our nation's finest when it comes to one of our heroes. And again, if the list of things I read to you that he's really focused on now in retirement, as he still stays very busy and continuing to give back. So, Rich, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? What's hometown for you?
I grew up in a small town in New Jersey known as Somerville, New Jersey. I graduated high school there, and I lost my dad at age 13, and was raised by a single family mother. I had a brother and sister also. My youngest brother passed away at age 48. My sister's still alive. My mom is still alive. We celebrated her 100th birthday last April.
100 years.
100.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
big congratulations, obviously, to her on that. And I obviously hate to hear about the loss of your brother. And you're currently residing where?
I'm in Ashburn, Virginia. That's in Northern Virginia. I'm about 5 miles south of Dulles Airport.
Okay. And that's home. And if you will, okay, yeah, very familiar with that area. Your time in law enforcement began when?
1 September 1967.
1967. Okay, and that and give us a little bit of history on that journey for you and why you chose law enforcement and kind of what took you on that path.
Growing up in my hometown, after my dad passed away, I had 3 police officers who befriended me, and they were really good to me. They'd give me rides home from football practice and stuff. And getting to know them actually started my interest in law enforcement. They were mad when I went to serve in another town, but they were very instrumental. Also, Dragnet, the series Dragnet, was also a part of my interest in law enforcement. And I came from a family of patriots. My dad was a World War II Navy veteran. My mother had five brothers, 5 of which served in U.S. Army World War II. I have an uncle, a really dear uncle, who passed away. He was a U.S. Marine, 08-11 in the Korean War. And so the law enforcement was always my dream job. And back in 1967, you had 2 things going on. You had the war in Vietnam, and then we also had all the civil disturbances going on in the U.S. And so there was a push for law enforcement. And so here's my dream job was right there. So I took it. I went to an academy in New Jersey run by the New Jersey State Police. It was on an old Air Force base. And most of my instructors were former Marines, the troopers, and they were tough. I mean, they had us out there on the parade deck at 5:30 a.m. PTing and all the other good stuff that goes with it. But then when I graduated the academy in November of '67, and I reported for my first duty assignment, I remember walking in, and there were 5 of us that graduated from the academy, and we walk into in the building, and there's a lieutenant, Bill Conway, and he said, "Gentlemen, I just want to let you know you're closer to jail tonight than you've ever been in your life." And I'm like, I don't understand that, But then he broke it down. He said, and I'm going to tell you why. And there's 3 things that will get you there: booze, bucks, and broads. He said, you get any combination of those, you're in trouble. And I took that to heart.
Well, and I would say
So
that's
then,
probably the one thing we would always say to young servicemen and women at every category, right, is those are the 3 things that will ultimately get you in the most trouble. And probably the one adjustment for the female sheepdogs out there is it's the men that are going to get you in trouble, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
so being careful with your choices is important. So
Yes.
Go ahead.
And,
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no problem. So I'm 6 months out of the academy. Let me back up a moment. I was trying to work my way into the narcotics squad because I had some family members who became addicted to heroin back then, and a couple of them lost their lives. So it kind of gave me a burning desire to work in that field. And so the sergeant who was the head of the narcotics squad, he said, all you got to do is start making some narcotics arrests out there while you're on patrol. And so I did. And then one day he called me over to a location that he was at, and he had 4 people with him. And he told me to come over. He says, I want you to look at these 3 men and this woman. If you ever see them, stop them, shake them down, pat them down, find out what they're doing. Back then, in '67, if you were a convicted narcotics offender, you had to carry an ID card. Wouldn't get away with that today, I guess, but back then it was law. So one day, now I'm 6 months out of the academy. So one day I left my shift. I was working the 0600 to 1400 shift, and I went home, parked the car, went in the house, took off my gun belt, my duty belt, my shirt, but all I had on was my uniform pants and my boots, and I had to go out to a local store. So I jumped in the car. I left my weapon home. I jumped in the car, and as I'm driving out of my neighborhood, I see those 4 people standing on the corner. And so I pulled over. I got out of my car, and I said, hey, what are you people doing here? What's going on? 2 of them pulled pistols out right away, forced me into my car. I had a '65 Mustang, forced me into my car, made me get in the back seat. One of them took over the driver's position. Another one was in the passenger seat. Then there were 2 of them in the back. I was all crunched up, and my nightstick was still in the car. So eventually they started hitting me with that. They were talking about killing me, and so we drove out of my neighborhood, and they turned on the local radio station, and that's when I learned that these people had just robbed a shoe store in New Jersey, in my town, and they were waiting for someone to pick them up so they could get out of town. And it just so happened that I came along and became their transportation. Uh, so they took a circuitous route all through New Jersey, went to Trenton. Then we finally wound up in New York City and West End and 72nd Street. And they roughed me up a little more. And then they jumped out of the car and they took off. I sat there for a few minutes. You know, I guess I was feeling like lucky to be alive at that time. But and then I drove back to my hometown and went to see my sergeant. And I told him what happened. And he said, "Well, weren't you armed?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, don't you know that there's a regulation that if you could lose your job and you're a probationary officer, probation for 1 year, you could lose your job for not having your weapon." And I told him the story. I was in a hurry, you know, whatever. And so with that, we got together a team and we went to New York City, Midtown, Manhattan North precinct. And I stayed there for about probably a week, sleeping over there. And the detectives over there started pulling in informants and people that they knew, and went out searching for these 4 defendants. And within a matter of a couple of days, they had them. And I was just amazed because you think about the size of the city of New York, the number of people, and these 4 people jump out and get in that crowd of a mess of people, and they pluck them out just like fish in a barrel. It was just amazing.
No, I was just thinking, you know, to your point, it's amazing how our law enforcement, you know, the men and women that work the communities and the streets that they're on, they've got a true feeling of the pulse of the streets that they work and the communities that they live in, to where it's they can feel and see when those ripple effects happen, right? If something's just not right, or someone is in the wrong place, or whatever it might be. And I think that speaks a lot to the missing aspect of what people just don't see on a daily basis with our law enforcement community, is just how much work is having to go on behind the scenes to make sure that that blanket of security is there and in place. And no, it's not 100% perfect. You know, I mean, the human factor of who we are is always going to allow for mistakes, but the amount of time, and I think more importantly, the amount of care that these men and women put into their job, and how important it is to them that they do a good job. And in doing that, how plugged in they are to that community, so that when something like that happens, to your point, they get the word that, you know, there's some bad characters out there on the street, whether it's informants that they have in place that they've been working with, and or just the trust level that those communities might have with the officers that they know. They can so quickly identify, and to your point, round up some bad people in a sea of people in a place like New York, right? So that's important. I think, you know, in you calling that out, that we recognize just how much work is taking place every day that enables our law enforcement community to do the job that they do. So, yeah, go ahead. Sorry about that.
And another thing that a lot of people don't realize, that back when I started in law enforcement, we didn't even have walkie-talkies. We had a call box key, and so there was an alarm on a pole. If that rang in your district, you went over to this gray box, put your key in, pick up the phone, and it would connect to dispatch, and then dispatch would tell you what they wanted you to do, whether stand on the corner, a radio car is going to pick you up, or walk up to such a location, whatever. All we had was a can of mace, your duty weapon, and a device called the Iron Claw, which was a come-along device. It looks like a small pair of ice tongs that you put on somebody's wrist and turn. And I don't care how big you are, you were going to come along. Uh, we had no vest back then. Our radio cars had no air conditioning, no good time radio, and vinyl seats. So in the summertime, I mean, when you finished a tour, you were soaking wet, like you had been in a sauna. We didn't get walkie-talkies until about 1971. Then we had walkie-talkies. Then we could communicate. But other than that, the communication between car and car, that was it. So.
I think about history is something that I'm passionate about, and I was listening to some information on law enforcement a few days back, and I'm going to get the exact dates wrong, but it was really talking about law enforcement and the growth and the expansion that it went through historically in this country. And when we think about technology today, right? You were sharing something with me that I found really unique. Is just, you think, well, radios have been around forever, right? And obviously today's generation, I think
right.
about my children, they've never known a life without a cell phone, where you can communicate with anybody at any time, and information is just at the click of a button. But to think about, and this is me telling my age, I was born in 1970, to just think about how things were like that with you didn't have radios even, where you're still using hard fixed landlines to communicate with everybody. And even that was an advancement when you think probably 30 years before that, when, it was just simply word of mouth. You had to go out and find someone to talk to them. But, the transformation of law enforcement, where it was talked about how law enforcement was almost more of like a medical service before it really turned into enforcing the law and arresting people. And, we think about the wild, wild west and marshals and sheriffs or whatever out in the old west, and how they all carried guns. But for the longest time in America's bigger cities, law enforcement officers didn't carry guns. They just carried a stick, a baton. And just to think about how far law enforcement has come today. And even, in your lifetime, from having served on the streets in the late 60s to where we are today, and just imagining the advancement in whether it's facial recognition and DNA and everything that ties into you being able to serve and protect, and in some ways a better way. But I also do, as we talked about, how they were easily, your department or the department there in New York could snatch up some bad actors. How do you think that has impacted? With so much technology, is there a risk of officers on the streets today not being plugged into their communities the way they used to be, right? Not having the familiarization of the people that live and work on those streets, and or just, it's created a little bit of a disconnect there. Do you think that rings true?
I really do. Back when I worked, sometimes I had a walking post. Other times I rode in a radio car. But I preferred the beat because it connected me with the community. And when I went into homicide, I mean, I got a lot of great tips from people just on my beat, But now it's so mechanized. Like in my the county I live in, Loudoun County, we have the sheriff's department. And they're all motorized. There's no walking beats in our county. Leesburg has its own police department. They have some walking posts. But other than that, everything's motor, either motorcycle or the car.
How long then were you as an officer on the streets? When did the transition to drug enforcement, really start to take place in your life? And what can you tell us about that from that decision? Because I I have to say I was imagining when you were picked up, or when you were questioning those four individuals, and then they're carjacking you basically, right? They're taking you as you're a prisoner of theirs, right? You're a hostage.
Mm-hmm.
So you become a hostage. You're a victim of a carjacking, and then of course my head's spinning because I had a '65 Mustang when I was in high school. So I'm going, well, what type of Mustang was it? Was one of the things I was thinking about. I hope they didn't put a scratch on that car, right? So it's but the fear. I mean, my Lord, Rich, and as you say, they've now got your police baton and they're beating you with your own baton. It's a little comical to think about now, but at the same time, I'm thinking, my God, there's got to be an element of fear. So before you take us into your DEA time, that had to really wake you up, right? It makes you appreciate that the streets can be very violent, and even a police officer, right? I mean, you're in law enforcement, and you're being taken advantage of from the standpoint of someone basically, they've stolen your car, they've taken you hostage, and they're roughing you up. So just a total disregard, unfortunately, for life sometimes, unfortunately, by bad actors. But just, that had to have taught you a lot. You had to have matured a lot in that realm of understanding that, hey, not only just as a person, but as a law enforcement officer, your life's at risk every day that you're doing your job. And here's another example of you're just trying to do your job. Hey, who are you? What are y'all doing? And next thing you know, you're wrapped up in something like that. Do you feel like that experience matured you a lot and kind of took you to that next level mentally when it comes to appreciating
Absolutely.
the challenges of being a law enforcement officer?
Absolutely. It taught me never to let my guard down, no matter what the circumstance was. And back then, in the 60s, there was a lot of anti-police rhetoric going around. I mean, especially being a black police officer. I mean, even the black community didn't like us because we were traitors to some people. I remember one of my aunts, my father's sister, when the announcement came out in the newspaper that I was going on the police department, she called me up and she said, this is what she said to me: "I'd rather see you be a garbage man." And that blew me away. And that's just, and then once I got out there, I understood what she meant, because there was so much disdain for law enforcement.
Yeah, that's powerful.
But so I'm working in the police department now, in the narcotics squad, and a couple of guys from the Union County, New Jersey prosecutor's office came down to the police department, and they said, they talked to the chief, and they said, "Hey, we understand you got a guy named Rich Oakley who works undercover." And they said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, we'd like to borrow him. We got a pretty big investigation that we want to start in Elizabeth, New Jersey, but we need a black undercover agent." So chief called me in and said, "Would you like to do it?" And I said, "Sure." So I went out there for about 2 months, and I think the total roundup was about 50 some people at the end of that case. Now, what was interesting about it was I had nobody on the street covering me, because back then you didn't have that many black police officers. Elizabeth, so what I did at the end of the night, after I made my purchases, I would go to a detective's house in Elizabeth. I'd turn over my stuff to him and make my notes, ID the people that I had purchased from, and then I would just go home and do it over again the next day. So after I finished that job with them, I said to them, I said, how much do you guys make? And they said, well, $10,000 a year. Oh, now when I joined the police department in '67, my salary was $5,000. So when I heard that, I said, "You guys looking for any
$5,000 a
help?"
year,
Sure.
right?
So I asked for
Wow.
a 6-month leave of absence.
So
I joined them,
So if you could do his job,
and
then you were going to double your
I was
pay.
their sole undercover operative for
Yeah.
for all the time I was there. Again, with nobody but covering me. Then, while I'm there, here comes 3 agents from the Drug Enforcement Administration. They said, "We have this big job where we want to conduct, but we need a black undercover agent. We don't have one in our Newark office, Newark, New Jersey." So they said, "We understand you have a guy that does a lot of undercover work." And they said, "Yeah." So they asked me, would I mind going over to help them? I said, "No." So I was on loan to them for about 3 months and did a lot of undercover work for them and brought in a lot of people. As I'm getting ready to go back to my agency, one of the agents walks over to me and hands me an application. He said, "You know, DEA is looking for people like you." And he handed me the application. I said, I'm good. I'm happy where I'm at and whatever. But I filled it out and I sent it in. About a year later, I get a letter summoning me to New York City for an interview. And I was like, okay. So I go to New York. They had a panel interview. I think there were 7 of us at that time. Uh, they interviewed us individually, and then they did a group interview. They threw out a topic that they wanted us to talk about. They just wanted to see how we interacted with other people, but by talking about this. I think it had to do something with about baseball. Anyway, so that started my career with DEA. I was accepted. I went through all the physical uh, agility and all that other stuff. Then I went to the academy in January of '74. Our range uh, exhaust stopped working, so they bused us to camp upshore on the Quantico Marine Corps base, and we used their ranges. And I mean, if we're talking January, I mean it was pretty cold out there, really cold. But I met some really great Marines. I mean, they befriended us, and it was really I was happy that I had that opportunity to train on that base. And then later on, we had in-service training there where they ran us through the boot obstacle course. That was pretty interesting too. So that then I get my first duty assignment with DEA was in New York City, which I was happy. During the last week of our training, they came in and they said, "We're looking for volunteers to go to New York," and not many hands went up. And they said, "Well, here's the deal. If you go to New York, you're only going to be there for a couple of years, and then you'll be able to choose the duty post of your choice." So my hand goes up. I go to New York. I'm there for a year, and the special agent in charge of the Newark Field Division saw me there one day, and he says, "I'm going to try to get you over to the Newark Division," and he did. So from there, I became their first division training coordinator. I taught state and local police officers about narcotics. I taught the FBI when they got involved in narcotics. Um, my forte was undercover surveillance and informant uh, control. So then I was the division training coordinator. And then I got tired of that and I said, I want to go back out on the street. So I went out and we had an all hands meeting with our special agent in charge. He had a teletype from Washington, D.C., and it said, Newark, New Jersey is one of the areas that needs to do more with heroin trafficking. So I went out, rounded up a couple of informants that I knew, and I started to work 2 heroin organizations, one at night, one in the daytime, different sides of town. And the one that became very, very big, they were doing $40,000 a day in heroin traffic. $40,000 a day. It was incredible. So I infiltrated the group. The first time I met the guy that was running the organization, it was in a bar called Wolf's Tavern. And the informant introduced me to him, and he said that hey, he's looking for some horse, which was a street name for heroin. And he said, I don't know what you're talking about, man. I don't know what you're talking about. So we were in the men's room. And so I pulled out this wad of cash that I had, and I said, well, hey, if you don't have it, somebody does. I'll find them. I put the money in my pocket, and I'm walking out. Hey, wait, let's talk. So I made my first purchase that day from him. But I thought about it later. I said, that could have gone the other way, too. I could have got robbed. You never know, because wherever there's dope, there's weapons. Wherever there's money and dope, there's weapons, always. I found that to be very true. So the investigation
money
goes
talks,
on
right?
and on and
you
on.
start flashing a big old wad of cash.
There started to be, I started to feel some heat in the area. So I was working with Newark Narcotics Squad. They were my backup team, very good team. And so we came up with a plan. They said, okay, here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow you're going to drive up in the area with your Volvo undercover car. We're going to have a radio car, pull you over, and go through the routine and arrest you, and then bring you in. So I drove at the designated time. The radio car comes by, pulls me over, pats me down, handcuffs me, puts me in the car, and we drive away. There was one fly in the ointment. All these people that were watching this go down, when they saw a police officer get into my car and drive it, they knew that if this was a bad guy, his car would have been towed. The police don't drive a crook's car, right? So the guy got in his car and he followed the police car and he saw them let me out at the federal building. And he kept that. He kept that. So the person that he had making the deliveries to me, he told him, he said, you know that guy that you're giving the heroin to, selling the heroin to, he's a Fed. And the kid said, well, what are we going to do? He said, we have to kill him. He's the only one that can testify against us. So this kid goes in the bar and he gets one of those old break open 22 caliber pistols for a bag of dope. He traded a bag of dope for a pistol. He gets some cardboard. He goes down to this wooded area and he's practicing shooting at me. So one day I go back. We're supposed to pick up another load of heroin, which I did. And then as I'm leaving, he says to me, hey, come back at 5. Can you come back at 5? We got a new batch coming in and we're going to give you a sample. It's really good stuff. So I said, okay. So I notify my backup team. We go back to the office. I secure the heroin and we go back out. I drive up to the bar. He's standing on the corner. My informant's in the car with me. He says, can we leave him here? I don't like two on one situations. So I said, sure. So the informant got out and he's standing on the corner. He's sitting in the passenger seat, and he's giving me directions to the location that we're supposed to go to. And as we're driving, he's asking me, how was that heroin that I delivered to you at McDonald's? And how is it at McDonald's, or how was the heroin at this location? Blah, blah, blah. Come to find out, he was just trying to make sure he had the right guy. So as we're driving, he's giving me directions. Now I'm looking in my side mirror. I can see my backup team following me. We're going up Frelinghuysen Avenue in Newark, and he says, make a left here. And there's a park, Frelinghuysen, Weequahic Park. In fact, I ran some cross-country races there when I was in high school. So we go into the park. He drives me up. He directs me to this cul-de-sac. He gets out of the car and he goes down this embankment. He comes back and I notice his hands are dirty. And he says, come on, come on. And I know I have a problem. I don't know what the problem is right now. I said, it can't be robbery because I don't have any money with me. So he says, come on, it's down here. I said, what's going on, man? You got people here? No, it's down here. So he goes down the embankment. He thought I was right behind him. I stood at the top of the embankment, and he turned, and I saw that nickel-plated weapon with the sun glazing on it. He fired the first round. I could hear it go past my ear. The second round misfired. Now I'm not armed again. So I turned and I started running in a zigzag pattern. He's running after me, shooting. There are people in the park. They're all getting in their cars, getting out of here, or turning their backs. As I get down the end of the road, there's an elderly black guy sitting on his car. And he said, are they shooting at you? I said, yes. Get in my car. So I got in, I jump in his car, and he reaches over the back seat, and I grab his arm and said, what are you doing? He says, I just want to get you some water. So he gave me some water. He says, where do you want to go? And I told him what precinct to take me to. And as the story unfolded, he was a local minister who the night before said that he was being troubled. He said the Lord kept telling him, you need to go to the park. You need to go to Weequahic Park. He said, Lord, I have no idea, but if that's your will, I'll do it. And once we found out, he told us the story. We brought him in the office and we gave him an award, had his kids with him. And he told the story about how the Lord was beckoning him to go to that park that day. And actually, he helped save my life that day. There were a couple of agents that quit the job after this incident. They said, there's no way I could do it, you know, because heroin was a very, very dangerous drug to be working back then. You know?
That was that was the meth of that day, right? It was destroying lives and just doing so much damage to communities. And I mean, the power behind that, as you shared, that, you know, that having that minister there that saved your life. What I am curious though about your backup team that was following you. They had you marked to kill because they knew who you were, and you had your backup team. Were they able to engage with this guy? Did they catch him?
So the backup team, they did after the purchases, they would follow this guy to see where he went. And he went to an apartment building in Newark. He didn't have an apartment. He was sleeping in the boiler room. So we went to the boiler room and executed the search warrant. He wasn't there, but the boots that he was wearing, the clothes that he was wearing that day were there. We found a greeting card from his girlfriend with her phone number. So we got to look up on the card. We knew where the girlfriend lived. So we go to the location, and one of the guys takes out a credit card, and he just opens the door. We open the door. This kid, he's sitting on the bed with the phone off the hook, saying to his girlfriend, "I'm not armed. They're here. If you hear shooting, they're killing me. I don't have a weapon. One of the guys walks over and pulls the phone line out of the wall. And when I saw him, I just lost it. I just grabbed this guy. I pushed him up against the wall and I tuned him up a little bit, and we took him in. But so then it comes time to prosecute, and I go down to U.S. Attorney's office, and one of the attorneys, U.S. attorney, said, "Oh man, you messed the case up. You hit him, blah blah blah." So this one uh, U.S. attorney said, "Hey, what better identification is that? He saw the guy that tried to kill him, and he went after him. I'll take the case." And he did, and the guy got convicted. But back then, the only charge that federally was assault on a federal officer, which carried a 10-year maximum. The kid got 10 years in Danbury, Connecticut, in federal prison. The prison psychiatrist would stay in touch with us and told us the guy has one mission. When he gets out, he wants to finish that job. And that's all he talks about. And he wound up being a hero in prison because once people found out he tried to kill a DEA agent, he could get anything he wanted out of the inmates. He was a hero.
Now, so they couldn't get him for attempted murder. Wasn't a charge they could put him with. And
if the state would have taken the case, we could have gotten more out of it. But you had those turf wars going on between state and feds. Feds want to take the case because it's one of our guys. But if the state took it, he would have got more time out of it. But the law has since been changed so that something like this would have carried more time than it did back then. When he said that when he gets out, he was petitioning to get out of prison to go back to New Jersey. So the victim's assistance program denied that. So they called me one day. Now I'm in San Francisco as a supervisory special agent running a group of agents. They called me up and they said, Michael Owens is being released in next month. And he's not going to New Jersey, but we're releasing him in Richmond, Virginia. And I laughed. And they said, "What are you laughing about?" I said, "Because about that same time, I'm going to be in Arlington, Virginia." I said, hour and a half away, maybe, But I figured chances of us meeting would probably slim to none. I didn't, back then when I was working, I had you probably saw some of the pictures with that huge afro that I had back then. And since I was inside, I was cleaned up. So I didn't have all that hair to go with it, and the sideburns and lamb chops and all those other.
You were a different man at that point. So, well, Rich, your stories, I think that are the ones that so often, they're glamorized on TV and in movies, but when you hear about what it is that truly, through an individual like yourself, that service and sacrifice that we talk about that is so important in defining our nation's sheepdogs, it is so important that we not forget, right? That we not forget the amount of harm's way that you're putting your own life at risk with, right? In the way that you serve. And the unfortunate side is when we think about the number of law enforcement officers that are dying and being killed in the line of duty on a regular basis. It's just atrocious from a standpoint of how our law enforcement is mistreated, misunderstood, and it's due to an ignorant segment of our population and society. But your story is an example of a little bit of luck and prayer, to that point, maybe a little bit of intervention by God, right? When a bullet misses your head and then the next round misfires, and then you've got a man of God, a minister there that you're able to jump in a car with and get out of the area, right? So I can't say enough about how important it is for our listeners to hear stories like yours. And on that note, we're going to pause just for a moment, and we're going to come back and finish up our segment with, as I told you, Big Oak, as I want to call Rich, as one of his many nicknames, having served. And you can tell from the experiences of Rich on the street and service that he has developed some very special bonds with the men and women that he has served with, and the men and women that he has trained. And so on that note, Rich, give us just a few minutes. We'll be right back to finish up today's episode of Sheepdog Nation. And as I said earlier, just thank you so much for being here with us. But we'll be right back in just a minute to wrap up today's segment. Thanks, Rich. Be right back. Hey, we are back with you, Sheepdog Nation. And wow, we've got Richard Oakley with us, or as his friends call him, Rich, or for his longtime friends out there, Big Oak. And so as we start this to close out today's episode, or this month's episode of Sheepdog Nation, I'd like to pause just for a moment to recognize the sponsor for this segment is Broadway Contracting out of Siloam Springs, Arkansas. Big thank you to Broadway Contracting. They are a very important sponsor of ours, have been for many years. And, what's important about our sponsors and donors is that they make it possible for us as an organization to do what we do. So taking time to say thank you to the people that support us, and in supporting us, obviously, are supporting our nation's sheepdogs, our military men and women, our veterans, and our first responder communities. We couldn't do it without you. So a big thank you to Broadway Contracting. Rich, I started out the segment and really kind of bragging about when I was reading through the list of just how you were still giving back. And I was exhausted reading about how much volunteering and supporting you're still doing. And I say that because I'm like, I thought I kind of did a lot. And I just want to say, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the sheepdog that you are. Thank you for the way you continue to serve and give back. I mean, 30 years of law enforcement, if I'm not mistaken. And
yes.
That's your adult life. I mean, that's, the prime adult life, your years, right? Of you gave the best 30 years of your life to serving your nation. And I think that's where people kind of, they gave 30 years. No, they gave the best 30 years of the life that they've been blessed to have. And I think that's what, people just don't quite appreciate is you were giving the best of everything, the best of yourself in giving back. And so a heartfelt thank you from me. I like to think of myself as a friend of yours. And the unfortunate side is, we've not been able to meet in person yet, but we've been friends on social media for a long time, and you and I have engaged in different things and sharing letters and experiences. And I respect you, admire you, and appreciate the opportunity that I've had to know you. And, today's been special for me and just giving me a chance to kind of hear more of your story and connect on a more personal level. We were talking a few minutes ago about how you heard about our organization through FLEOA, the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, and they are a sister organization of ours. And so you were a member of FLEOA, and we were offering a special membership package to members of FLEOA that wanted to join our organization. And I was laughing. For those of you that can't see Rich on this podcast, if you're listening to us, he has one of our original Proper. Proper is the company that was a huge sponsor of ours in our early days, that they make military and first responder uniforms and equipment. And Rich is wearing one of our Proper sheepdog polos from, probably close to 11, 12 years ago. So I love those polos. Proper, like I said, has done a lot of great stuff for us. So a little bit of shout out to them and kudos for their support. But again, I appreciate you. And can you share with us, just as we close out this episode, a little bit of why is it that you continue volunteering the way you do? Why is it that you are, I think I know the answer from why it is that, I still continue to serve in my capacity after serving in the military for so long. But why is it for you? Why do you do it?
I'm always trying, for some reason, I'm always trying to give back to the community, and I haven't figured out a way to turn that off. And so I just keep going. I travel an hour to go down to the National Museum of the Marine Corps to as a docent, hour one way, and I enjoy that. I mean, meet a lot of great people, meet a lot of great Marines, and just to immerse yourself in the Marine Corps history is phenomenal. I suffer from PTSD because back then, those traumas that I went through never got resolved until 1991. When I went to DEA headquarters, they had clinicians on staff. And I knew I needed help. And I went in one morning at 6 o'clock in the morning and talked to them. And I always resisted that. And I'm glad that the agency eventually made that mandatory if you were involved in any kind of shooting. But it opened my eyes. It made me understand me a little bit more. It made me understand why I continued to, even people would ask me, why did you stay on the job? Even after that police department incident. I said, because it was my desire to help, to help people, to want to help people. Even though when you say that today, people kind of shrug their shoulders and say, "Oh, you just want to carry a gun or a badge," and But a lot of people go into this job, and I think it's a calling. Actually, I believe it's a calling. Some people don't stay in long because they're disillusioned when they get in and when they find out what kind of treatment they get from the outside. But I stayed with it, and I still continue to give back to the community that I think gave a lot to me.
Oh no, and that, I can feel it. I can feel the passion, and you for being able to continue giving back, and it speaks so highly of who you are as a person and your character, and you said it. I mean, law enforcement profession is not an easy job. I've said so many times from my platform as a 30-year Marine Corps veteran that I can do the Marine Corps job, go serve in combat all day long, but I couldn't do your job. I couldn't do the role of what so many of our law enforcement deal with, whether it's child abuse, battered spouses, being an undercover agent and having to put your life in harm's way in such an intimate manner, right? Where you're having to build relationships with people that ultimately you're going to have to arrest potentially, and or God forbid have to kill in order to save your own life, right? If your life is being threatened. And I think we as a society have got to figure out how to do a better job of respecting our law enforcement community. I have so much respect for what our men and women do, and so many different law enforcement roles out there. Now, of course, are there bad apples? I mean, we talk about this, and this is that unfortunate side for the law enforcement community today, is that, like you said, law enforcement was looked down on back in the 60s, and it's kind of like, the military was, you had the Vietnam era and all that going on. But the unfortunate side is we've come back full circle again. Whereas I think 9/11 was the peak of respect for a lot of our first responder community, our law enforcement men and women, and our fire and rescue and EMS men and women. And now we're in this segment of history where so many in just the first responder community, but especially the law enforcement community, is looked down upon again. And that's just so unfair. Every profession has a few bad apples, and those few bad apples unfortunately spoil it for so many of the men and women like yourself who are willing to quite literally put their life on the line for others and die if necessary. And so again, from myself to you and representing this organization, to all of our men and women out there in uniform, and today specifically our men and women in law enforcement, thank you. Thank you for what all of you do, and for what all of you have done to men and women like Rich, who have sacrificed so much of their life to serving our great nation and the communities that they have lived in. We appreciate you. And Rich, today was an opportunity for us just through your story to remind everyone how important men and women like you are to our, to civilization, right? Without the ability to enforce the law, which is so important, we wouldn't be who and what we are. So in closing, anything that you'd like to share with our audience, or anything that, that you'd like to say as we close out today's podcast?
Yes, I'd like to tell all my brothers and sisters out there who are currently working to keep your chin up, be safe, stay vigilant, keep your head on a swivel, and don't let your guard down. And God bless you for what you're doing.
Amen to that. And, opportunities like this, we just don't have enough of, right? And we as an organization are going to continue to find all sorts of different ways to improve the lives of our men and women in uniform in whatever way we can. I will, on this podcast, so on the air, Rich, I'm going to challenge you to consider going through our Warrior Path program. And I share that because one, I think all humans benefit from the post-traumatic growth model and language, but our Warrior Path program is specifically for our fellow sheepdogs. And I know you would gain something from it, but I'll tell you what, I think if you're able to go through it, you would continue to be a beacon for us and helping to inform so many like-minded sheepdogs out there of the importance of self-care. And if you went through our Warrior Path program, I know you would go home and help us spread the word to get more of our sheepdogs, more of our nation's heroes into a program like Warrior Path that can help them on their journey in overcoming the challenges of post-traumatic stress and teaching them how to live their best lives. So consider that for me, because I would love to see you in one of our Warrior Path programs. I know that And then we talk about our outdoor adventure programs. I know you and I visited a little bit about going to Yellowstone with us during the winter, but I'm going to invite you again. We have a Yellowstone package this summer as well. So a Yellowstone package starting this February for a winter package, and then our summer package in Yellowstone. And so the invitation is out there for you I know you couldn't make the winter package, but if you'd like to join us in the summer, love to have you out there. And for any of our fellow sheepdogs out there that would like to do more with us as an organization, please go online, check out our website. We have our outdoor adventures that are running year-round. They are in high demand. So if you want to go on an outdoor adventure with us, you got to get your name in the hat now. And, within the next 6 to 18 months, we'll try and get you into one of our slots. And then our Warrior Path program about mental wellness and helping you overcome some of your job-related and life-related traumas. Such an amazing program, and it is changing lives, changing families. And so I hope all of you will check that out as well. But Rich, Lord help me, my friend. Thank you so much for today. I appreciate you again for your service and sacrifice. And we are so thankful that you were able to join us on Sheepdog Nation podcast number 5. So thank you again, and I'll look forward to us connecting in the future, very near future.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation to come on. And brothers and sisters, if you're struggling out there, please get help. Please get help, because I struggled with it for many years with alcoholism. There was a point in time when I almost I wanted to take my life, but I get that help. Get that help out there if you need it. And Sheepdog Impact Assistance would be a good start for you too.
Amen to that. Thank you, my friend. All right, to everyone out there in Sheepdog Nation land, thank you all for what you do. Thank you for listening today. We're out.
We're going to be going over a list of questions together. Do you find yourself being super alert or watchful or on guard, feeling jumpy or easily startled?
No.
Having difficulty concentrating or trouble falling or staying asleep?
No.
Are you feeling distant or cut off from other people?
No.
Are you having strong negative beliefs in yourself or other people or the world around you?
Get off me.
Sophia, don't tell me what it is!
No.
Have you been blaming yourself or someone else for the stressful experience or what happened after it?
Shit happens, okay? That's the fucking job. Are we done?
Sophia.
Can you tell me your name?
Sophia.
Can you tell me if this is your blood? You're okay. I'm just gonna give you some oxygen right here. Nice deep breath, Sophia. Look at me right here. Can you tell me what happened?
Welcome to Boulder Crest. Thank you for taking a knee and choosing to be here with us. Over the next week, we are going to be creating a safe and trusting environment, one in which you can be open and ultimately turn your struggles into strengths. Hold it. Keep holding. Fight those shakes. Show me you are warriors. That's why you're here. That's all right. It's all right. Go ahead, release down. When we're holding that tension and we're holding that stress, if we keep it in, we're gonna break. We need to be able to release the tension.
Horses have mastered living in the moment. If we can just grasp a piece of it. No lecture, no book is going to be able to give you this connection.
This bonfire symbolizes making peace with our past so that we can create our own future. These struggles, these traumas, they don't define us. Take a big inhale. Exhale.
Shifts happen. Recognize those shifts occurring and embrace them.
We look to our past to understand, not to place blame.